Craig, is there any reportable action?
Craig, can you unmute yourself?
Craig, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry about that. There's no reportable action, but the board intends to take public comment at the session on August 24th and to conduct a closed session on the topic at the board meeting on August 24th.
So just to repeat it, there will be a public session at our next meeting to take public comments on the administrator position. And then at the end of the meeting, we will go into closed session to discuss the administrator position again and other closed session topics. And so that's where we're at. Anything else, Craig?
No.
Okay, great. Very good meeting, everybody. Thank you for all of your participation, and the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
We're back and squeaky. Now we're with Hallmark Group. And Matt, do you want to explain what our procedures are again?
Get us started. So welcome back, Hallmark Group.
Thank you.
I'll let you introduce your team in a moment, but our format today is we have 10 questions, followed by some follow-up questions. The questions are each going to be asked by the 5 directors. With us this morning, I know you've met them before, but just a brief introduction. We have Derek Yaroseck, who represents landowners, as well as John Calandri, who also represents the landowners, Rob Parris, who represents AVAC, Kathy MacLaren, who represents the public water suppliers, and on the phone we have Adam Ariki, who represents LA County Waterworks Districts 40.
Our group, and she will provide the function of transition lead. Taylor Blakesley, who's also a key member of the team that we're proposing for our work with you guys, he's on vacation that he couldn't change. So he's not in Hawaii. I heard you guys talking about Hawaii, but he's in Oregon and unable to be there. He's remote today. But on the phone, we do have Jacqueline Harris, who's a member of our team that provides all the financial and administrative support that we've identified. So again, we were appreciated to be here. Excited to answer all your questions.
Great. Then
Thank you.
Let us get started. And Derek, you have the first question.
Great, thank you. Good morning, thank you for being here. So the first question is, describe any prior experience relating to management and operation of a public agency.
Yeah, I feel like when haven't I been running a public agency? So I'll work backwards. So currently, I serve as the executive director as part of the Hallmark team that's supporting the Kiama Basin GSA. Jessica helped bring that organization on board when we were selected to be the executive directors back in 2017. So we provide all the services, and as I mentioned in our last interview, very similar to the type of services you're seeking for this engagement. And also, we provide the executive management services for the Eastside Water Management Area, which is a nonprofit organization that was formed to provide SGMA compliance for landowners in the northeast portion of Bakersfield area that's currently non-districted. And that's exciting because I'm doing something I've never done before. I'm actually forming a water district. They're in the process of initiating district formation. So that's interesting, but that's another function we're currently providing executive director services for. And at the same time, we also provide administrative support to the executive director of San Luis Obispo County's director of SGMA operations. So they have a one-person staff, and then our team provides support to Blaine Reedley, the SGMA officer in San Luis Obispo County. So working back from there, I served as the general manager of the Kern County Water Agency for 12 years during my 32-year career at the Kern County Water Agency, and as such provided all the executive director, general manager leadership for that organization. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And then prior to that, I served while at the agency as executive director for their Metropolitan Bakersfield Water Service Area Improvement District 4. That provides the drinking water and groundwater supplemental supplies for the greater Bakersfield area. If it was by itself, it would have been like the 5th or 6th largest state water contractor, but it's a subdivision of the Kern County Water Agency. In addition to my background, other members of our team also have some experience with public water agencies and public agency support. Not identified in our team for this effort, but available if needed. We have 2 former general managers of public water agency on our team. Curtis Creel is my immediate successor at the Kern County Water Agency. He was general manager for 4 years there. Prior to that, he served in the State Water Project Division of the Department of Water Resources for over 25 years. And then also a member of the Hallmark staff is Harry Starkey, who served as general manager of the Bell Ridge Water District and then retired as the general manager of West Kern Water District. In addition, the Hallmark team staff has provided support for both the state water contractors and the federal contractors, which involve a number of state water or public water agencies. So we've been doing this a long time and have the expertise and experience, not on just my experience, but our entire staff. Taylor Blakesley served for 10 years as management assistant while I was at the Kern County Water Agency. So he also has more experience than just that he gained with the Hallmark team. I would challenge you guys to find a more qualified team when it comes to public agency experience.
Okay. Thank you.
Right.
That brings Kathy. Go ahead.
Hello. Being an excellent communicator is vital for the transition to the assigned duties for our Watermaster board and various parties. Give me some examples of your communication style.
Yeah, while I have a tremendous amount of experience and technical expertise, my style is very casual because I think that's important to be able to communicate to stakeholders, kind of what you see is what you get. Even though I'm very comfortable with anywhere from testifying before Congress to appearing in court on very important trials, I really like my one-on-one communication where I can sit down with an individual stakeholder or frankly at times an individual employee and lay out what's really important to them, understanding and reaching out and hearing from them personally, and then being to address their concerns. I don't like making speeches, although I can. I really want to be able to address the needs of the individual and the group when I communicate, and I know that's an important part of the team, so we value listening. The first thing I learned in being a good communicator is, don't just tell them what you want to hear, but answer their questions and address the needs of the individual or group that you're speaking with. I've got a lot of experience dealing with the media, so I feel very confident that I can address the media in an appropriate way to represent the Watermaster or whatever public agency, as does the rest of the team. So my style, very direct, very straightforward, and always mindful of who I'm representing, that it isn't just my opinion, but it's the opinion and face of the organizations that I'm representing that I've got to be mindful of when I'm responding to questions and anytime we're communicating. Really value that we really are ambassadors of the organizations that we serve.
Thank you.
Okay. Adam, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming back again. We appreciate your time. My name is Adam Ariki, and as Matt stated, that I represent LA County Waterworks District 40. My question is, does your company or you personally have a conflict of interest that could affect you from carrying out your role as the Watermaster Administrator?
Yeah, thanks, Adam, and appreciate that you could join by phone. We did discuss this the last time we were here with you, and we identified in our proposal that we had previously perform work for Grimway and Boathouse Farms. We currently do not have agreements to provide consulting services. The work that we did for them was not in the Antelope Valley portion. It was a different engagement, so we don't feel we gained any significant information or perspective on that that's different from what the other stakeholders would be able to provide to us in sharing their opinion. I did mention that currently we do have a contract with Tejon Ranch or Ranch Corps to provide water resource management services. Those services have been in water resource development primarily, and specifically working with them on water treatment technologies for reclaiming produced water. Among the other things that I do and the expertise that I have is I do know water treatment. I'm a certified operator and distribution person, as well as a level 4, the highest level water quality analyst. And those expertises have really been what I've been bringing to the table along with the rest of our team, and looking at treatment options for produced water in portions of the Kern County area that Tejon owns. So we've been looking at that. Apart from that, those are the only conflicts that we've identified. And I got to say, Adam, like you're aware with larger firms and people with our types of experience, we've encountered times where, like other consultants, we've had potential conflicts or frankly concerns about the appearance of potential conflicts. We're very comfortable navigating those, and at times we've taken the steps, even when it wasn't required legally, but practically we've taken the steps to step away from clients in order to make sure that we're properly perceived as being unbiased and without conflict. And that's the way we've conducted ourselves and will continue to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Now that you've made the final 3, what have you done, if anything, to understand more thoroughly what is required of you, and do you believe your proposal and annual fee is accurate? And are you planning to do all duties remotely?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last phrase.
And are you planning to do all your duties remotely?
Oh, great questions. Yes, we have done additional research on the Watermaster. I went through, and I know our team reviewed the rules and regulations that were developed in July of 2020 by your engineer, and they do a great job of providing the list of what's expected by the different operating branches of the Watermaster, from the board to your engineer to an administrator if you so elect. And so I think that we all feel a little more familiar with exactly what those duties are, even though they were well specified in your RFP. And we hope that we address them in our initial proposal. So I can go into specifics, but I'll just go. And that's where we reviewed that. And I also reviewed the notice of agreement as well. The key questions and concerns, we understand that anyone, whether it's Hallmark or one of the other potential firms, about working remotely is really things we've learned during COVID, that it's always best to be face-to-face, whether you're working with individual stakeholders or conducting board meetings, but that's not always practical from a health perspective, but also from a cost and organizational perspective. So, as we mentioned last time, we identified the potential for us to establish a working environment here in Antelope Valley, and we've thought about that some more and are suggesting that if that's an important feature for the Watermaster, that would locate one of our employees, probably Taylor Blakesley, on a monthly basis, if that's appropriate, within AVAC or other offices if that's needed. We thought currently if there was space available, it would save on some of the cost of having someone locate. We don't have a physical presence here, but we're willing to consider that. We do a lot of work throughout the state. So we do work in Ventura, as well as Cuyama, and San Luis Obispo, Sacramento, and portions of Northern California. So we've encountered the need to overcome some of the impediments with working remotely. We, for example, in Cuyama, we do bundle our meetings. If we have a need to meet with anyone locally, we do that on the same day we attend the board meeting and make it a full day if we travel over there. here we were suggesting that we could discuss having, apart from having a longer presence on board day, again, we like to bundle meetings, so we'd have our staff and come over earlier, schedule any meetings, especially during the transition phase with the current staff that's performing those, so we can get up to speed. We expect that we'd be having those meetings during the month as well remotely, but that would have a touch point established every month where we'd be with staff and any other stakeholders we needed to on that day. In addition, we could space out another day where we're here in person to address any questions or concerns that stakeholders would have, or to set up additional meetings in person. The way that we thought about how to handle that is Taylor Blakesley works out of our Bakersfield office, as does Josh Montoya. The two of them have other responsibilities that while they're here and not working on Antelope Valley Watermaster issues, they could be performing their other functions so long as they have access to Wi-Fi and they have their cell phones and can get reception. So they do other client work here, just like they would in our Bakersfield or Sacramento offices. We think that we can meet the needs of the Watermaster by establishing that, and frankly, we're really expecting it to be an iterative process, so that we start out trying some things, we modify that based on the experience of the stakeholders and the board to see what works best for you guys and how that fits into the overall budget and the flow of things. But we think that that can address any concerns that folks will have about a local presence.
Thank you. I really like your handout, by the way.
Oh, can I say something about the handout? A couple of things. We're not a pricey organization. Jessica got a free upgrade on the quality of the paper. we look to save money wherever we can, so we didn't want you to think we were a pricey, fancy Sacramento group. We got a free upgrade. The other thing is, it has the basic information we have provided in our proposal, but we know lunch is coming up. Could you do us a favor and flip it over and eat lunch on the backside so you're not eating on top of our faces? That would just be creepy. No, we hope that provides some additional takeaways for you to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. And that wasn't my question, so I do that. So having a local presence and understanding of the needs of the Antelope Valley is important to the parties of the judgment. Please explain how you will maintain a local presence and stay engaged with the local needs of the community while implementing the judgment. And I know that's a crossover from what you just talked about in John's question. So,
yeah, it's really building on that. Having a local presence is only one facet of really understanding and keeping your finger on the pulse of what the stakeholders and the board needs. So if we just showed up and sat in an office once a month, that wouldn't be doing our job, like to keep up to speed. So a couple of things we would do is reach out, especially during our introductory phase, and see if there were key stakeholders that the board thought would be helpful for us to talk with and get their perspective on what's important, as well as individual meetings with the board members. We found that was really helpful in our onboarding process in Kiyama, where we did take time with each of the 11 board members to get their perspective, get their historic involvement with the organization, but more importantly, what their concerns and questions were as we went forward with that organization. So we have the need to get established, to get the initial understanding of what needs are, but then you've got to keep up to date. So having a presence here where we can reach out to the stakeholders on an as-needed basis to them. I always, every day, the first thing I do in the morning is I look at all the local newspapers, whether there is no local newspaper in Kiyama, but there are newspaper articles written, so we look to see what the media is writing about that organization. I've been following the Antelope Valley for a while now, so we'd continue to monitor what public media outlets are saying about this and what the general concerns and questions are. We do also monitor the Department of Water Resources website on a regular basis. If you're not familiar with it, they put a daily post out that identifies media information throughout the state. what does that have to do with the Antelope Valley? Well, there's other similar organizations that you can get good information on to avoid what might be happening throughout the state. Those are the key things that we'd be doing to try and stay up to speed. We also establish contact on our website. So on our website, we would continue the practice that we have in Kuyama, which is you can email us, you can call us. There are some folks that just feel like, I'm going to pick up the phone and talk to someone. And we've established a way that can happen through our website and through our if you call the number on our Kuyama website, one of our phones rings. We may not answer it right away. We are busy people, but we do get back to every phone call that's made, and we make sure that people understand that. When we do have board meetings, we're always there before the board meeting to make sure we have a chance to touch base with the stakeholders and folks that normally don't get to talk to us. We always make sure we're the first ones there and the last ones to leave so that we get a chance to answer any questions. The other thing that we've done in other areas is we've had workshops. The East Side Water Management area, we helped get that established. We had 7 or 8 public workshops soliciting landowner participation in that. And if that's appropriate from time to time, the Watermaster may want to have workshops where the folks that don't normally get to participate in your board meetings can attend, ask questions, have addressed issues of general concern, and then stick around, answer questions of staff. If the board members or think it's appropriate, they could be available for questioning as well and for comments. So those are kind of the few of the quick ideas about how to maintain connection with the community, because you have to know what's going on in order to serve the stakeholders here.
Has the Hallmark group had any experience working in the Antelope Valley with any organizations, cities, county, water districts?
Yeah, so yes, we have. We've worked with all the state water contractors that are in it. So AVEC and Palmdale, we've worked with their water districts when I was general manager, and certainly when Curtis Creel was. So we're familiar with some of their board members. I've been to this board meeting a few times as general manager. So we have some familiarity with those organizations and some of the smaller ones we've worked with. At times, there's been proposed projects in portions of the eastern Kern County area. And sorry, I'm going to give you a quick lesson on Kern County politics. If you're on the AVEC board, you understand the segregation between the Kern County Water Agency and Antelope Valley East Kern Water Agency. But for those of you who may not be, Kern County Water Agency is a county-wide organization whose boundary overlies the entire Kern County area, with the exception of AVEC when it comes to state water project matters. So if groundwater matters were occurring, for example, they wanted to build a solar farm in Rosamond area where they were going to do groundwater banking as a combination. Remember that project? We did get involved in commenting that at the request of Kern County because it had some implications countywide on some of the proposed ideas. So we've worked on policies that have potentially impacted entire Kern County as well as state water project issues.
Thank you.
Great. So my second question is, describe your general understanding of the Brown Act and any work experience involving the Brown Act that you and your team have had.
You know, as a public agency administrator, most folks, when you say Brown Act, they cringe. I don't feel that way. The Brown Act was enacted by the state of California to ensure that the public has access to the ongoing responsibility and activity of the public agencies that they are responsible for. So I view the Brown Act as a safeguard to ensuring the public is afforded the opportunity to not only observe, but to participate in the public actions of the boards that govern their interests. So that's a little bit different than a lot of organizations that view the Brown Act as an impediment to their operation. Now, can it be cumbersome? Can it require things? Absolutely. But you have to be aware of them whenever you're strategizing about when to call a meeting and how to structure that in order to ensure that you qualify for that. So currently the Kiama Basin GSA is the only organization that we are directly serving that is under the Brown Act. And of course, the Kern County Water Agency, just like AVAC, is under the Brown Act. So I'm very familiar with all the requirements, noticing provisions, what you can and can do with roll calls even. Have to overcome those. Now, as I have some familiarity and pretty extensive familiarity with the Brown Act, I always rely on the attorney's interpretation of the Brown Act and how individual organizations comply with that. So when in doubt, I ask them, for example, when do you take a roll call vote? How do you add an item to the agenda? What's the appropriate way to handle email? I'm a big advocate, too, of annual training with the board on Brown Act compliance. That there are things that are important for the board members as well as staff to understand what you can and can't do to stay out of trouble. And I did that annually at the Kern County Water Agency. We do it regularly as needed at the Kiama Basin GSA. From time to time, we're having to give primers on Brown Act protocol. So really have spent quite a bit of time complying with it, but also ensuring that we follow it in order to ensure that folks get access to the information that they're entitled to and to be able to participate in a way that's appropriate. I will say, though, I'm also protective of the board. So you don't want to have someone come in and believe that they have the right to hijack a meeting and filibuster for 3 hours and say that they're entitled to do that under the Brown Act. We've had to make sure that we can step in and address those issues as well to ensure that everyone gets the opportunity and that you're complying with the requirements that you really address topics that are relevant to the agenda and run within the jurisdiction of that board. And I've seen people address boards on a multitude of issues that were unrelated and had to assist our attorney and board in reeling that in.
Thank you. Kathy?
Okay. I think you've given us several ideas of what my question would be, what relevant experience to this job do you have? So you have given us a background of experience. So anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, a couple of things I'd add to that. I've been where you are. I've sat on boards that had to hire a consultant to help them manage a process that they were trying to transition from staff-led to full-time or more formal engagement. And that's really when I became familiar with the Hallmark group. And so I was part of the team that was managing what then was the tunnel project, the successor to the peripheral canal. The general managers of the state water contractors and the Central Valley project were overseeing the administration of those efforts that DWR, the Department of Water Resources, was undertaking at the time. Those organizations had spent $25 million and were not making any progress. And the concern was, we're sending our money to the Department of Water Resources, but we're not making any progress. What can change? And the thought was, we aren't making headway with our part-time employees, or employees spending part of their time on this. We really need some group that can really focus on that. And that led us to solicit input from a number of firms, but Hallmark was clearly the one that seemed to have the most relevant experience and the right perspective. And so having been where you are, I think I know what I can know the decisions that you're wrestling with and the needs that you have. You know, we were in the position where all our employees, whether it was a Kern County Water Agency employee or employees of the other groups, all our employees were working more than their share of full time before we started the project. And then we layered that on. And part of the things that we recognized is our employees didn't have enough time to adequately address the needs of that tunnel project and to manage and oversee department staff and ensure department was living up to their requirements. So that experience really gave me the understanding, I think, of how it is to sit where you're at. You got to make sure that you're getting value for your money. You got to make sure that whoever you select to assist you in this is in it for the long haul and can deliver what they say, and that they're effective in what they're doing. So I really feel that expertise allows me to get in your shoes and to make sure that when you're looking for your needs to be met, that not just me, but the entire team, again, a lot of ex-agency administrators, they understand what's required from your perspective. And that's something I don't think I've highlighted. I've also been on boards that have created JPAs and had to start up organizations like the State Water Contractors Joint Powers Agency. So I've sat through interviews much like this with firms much like ours. So I understand what that dynamic is as well.
Thank you.
Always like to insert a little humor into these things. How did that tunnel project turn out?
Still going.
My thought, if I just stayed on a little longer and not retired, like there's a correlation to the project not succeeding and me retiring and Hallmark ending their association. So I think those two are directly related to where that's going. I still am a strong advocate. All kidding aside, I think it's got to be done, and there's been a lot of missteps that I could spend about a week telling you what went wrong with it.
I can imagine. So thank you. Adam? I think you're muted again, Adam.
Yes, I kind of spotted myself quickly before I started reading. Thank you. Jim, you already, again, kind of answered this in your opening remarks, but do you have a backup person? And if so, does this individual have a relevant experience to the Watermaster Administrator role?
Yeah, that's a good question. You guys do the quick math, you know that I'm over 50. And I'm a part-time consultant, and like I said last time, I only work with clients that interest me and that I think I would enjoy working with. And if I were sitting where you are, I'd be wondering how long is this guy going to last, and what happens if, like any executive team, you want to know what's the backup if this doesn't work out. As far as my individual, I win the lottery. I always use that analogy as opposed to the what if I get hit by a bus, because I'm a positive person. So if I win the lottery and decide I don't want to do this any longer, what happens with homework? Well, first of all, we've got an experienced team. Jessica herself has led organizations and could definitely, again, provide that support and oversight. Taylor Blakesley has, my intentional long-term is to have him step into my role in any areas that are appropriate. But immediately we have Curtis Creel, as I mentioned, our former general manager of the Kern County Water Agency, who I haven't had the time to go into his credentials, but you can tell Curtis I said that they're as impressive as mine. Curtis and I are great friends, and I know he'd be willing to assist if need be to lead this organization, as well as Harry Starkey. They both have similar administrative experience. They both are great communicators and have much of the same ideals that I have. That's why they were willing to join Hallmark when they retired. So we feel that we're well positioned that if I guess I got to play the lottery to win. But if I win the lottery, we have appropriate folks that can step in on an as-needed basis to continue the work that we're doing.
Thank you.
And John, that brings you up.
Well, when you get this low on the list, you've answered a lot of the questions. I'm going to shorten a little. Now, as we enter the final stage of selecting an administrator, please explain your proposed staffing plan and the roles of the individuals on the team, and how are you going to approach the transition to ensure adequate training and development, and what are those people's credentials?
Yeah, I went through this in some detail at the beginning, John, but I just will add a couple of other things maybe to round this out. You can tell we've thought a lot about this and how we transition each of the members. So we don't need to train our staff on how to do the mechanics, right? It's all about becoming familiar with this particular client. So none of us will be learning on the job. That's a big thing for this organization. We're not here to learn how to do this. We're here to help bring our expertise and utilize the many years of experience to provide an efficient and effective Watermaster administrative services support. If that's not important, we're not the right firm, because really that is the biggest ticket we bring. But we do need to become familiar with the specifics of this particular Watermaster's issues. So we plan on having a transition program where we're specifically onboarding with staff. We really appreciate any opportunity we'll have with Matt and his team and the team that's supporting the board currently. A, get familiar with what they've been doing. B, find out what worked, what didn't work, and to shortcut some of the mistakes we might make, and then C, recommendations on how to proceed and what were the things that they were wanting to get to, but frankly either didn't have the time to get to. So that's the key we see with the current staff, as well as the board members spending time with you to have those one-on-one discussions.
Thank you.
And I have the final prepared question. And when we started our Watermaster board, there were a lot of naysayers that did not think we could run this board on the $5 assessment per acre foot. And to the credit of our current administrator and the staff that sits here in front of you and our water master engineer and attorney, we've been able to accomplish that. So can you please explain how you will ensure cost control and stay within your proposed fee while maintaining an adequate level of service to implement the requirements of the judgment?
Yeah, so we provide monthly updates to each of our clients, and with our public agencies, we tailor those reports to their need, the need that they have for cost counting and tracking. And in the Kiama Basin, for example, we have financial reports that, as I mentioned, I think in our last meeting, comply with all the standard accounting practices, principles, and we meet all those. Those aren't always the most useful tools for managing the budget. So in addition to that, we put together metrics and a dashboard that allow us to see at a snapshot, are we on budget and how's our cash flow going? But beyond that, it's great to be on budget and on your cash flow, but are you accomplishing the task that you intended to get with that budget? It's a whole nother thing, right? So you can't just track two. You have to make sure you're accomplishing what you have scheduled for the assessments and the funds that you've designated for those areas. And that's been a key component of the Hallmark group, as well as my experience prior to joining the Hallmark group. It's not just enough to count dollars, but it's count achievements and goals. And so that's the first tool that we would use. The next is engagement with the board to ensure that we're accomplishing the goals that they would like, and that the stakeholders have provided you guys with feedback of what's important to them. So when we look at cost control, we will not work smarter, because we work as hard as we can all the time. So it's not one of my favorite things. We've got to work, not that, more, we got to work smarter. We work as hard as we can all the time, and are always looking at ways to cut costs through coordination with other groups. If there's partnerships that make sense, we always are looking for those. If there's grant opportunities, we are all over those. We think that would be an important part of our mission, is to seek out funds like that, and to make that a task as far as seeking ways to offset the operating cost and potential development cost. We look at being efficient with our time, making sure that when we spend time in a meeting, that it's efficient, that it's not running longer. Those are the key factors we see in cost containment.
And is it your plan to take over all the administration duties, collecting the assessments, running the meetings, everything that our current administrator and staff does now?
Yes, John, our plan is to provide, and in our proposal, we attempted to do that, make sure that we included all the administrative services that the Watermaster needs. So soup to nuts would be invoicing, would be collecting money, would be providing those financial reports, everything, frankly, that the legal team and your engineer is not doing. We assume that's kind of the way it goes, that if they're not doing it, it falls to the administrative team.
And I know that you provided this before, but for the public that's listening in, what is your yearly budget to do the administration for the Watermaster Board?
Yeah, we provided a range in our proposal of $168,000 to $240,000 per year, and that we identified some optional activity that would take you to the $240,000 range. If you'd like, Jessica has the spreadsheet up in front of her. She can go through those in any more specificity if that's helpful.
Or do you want Jessica to do that, or are we good? I know we've seen it before. We good? Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
And Jessica, we'd love to hear from you.
I know Jim's doing such a good job. I've got all my notes. I'm ready to talk, but that's all right. I think we're good for a long time.
I saw your eyes get real big, so.
I'm ready. Thank you.
And that opens us up for other questions. And actually, I should have warned you, Adam, I start with you now because you're to the left of Kathy.
Yeah.
Okay. Jim, are your clients or all landowners? Your clients.
Are our clients all landowners? Oh, no. Our clients, as I said, we have Kiama Basin, a GSA, is a public agency. Eastside Water Management Area is a nonprofit organization that is in the process of becoming a water district there in Kern County. San Luis Obispo County is one of our clients that we provide Sigma services to. And then we have a handful of other public agencies in Northern California, Panoche Water District, for example, where we provide water resource management and acquisition activity. Westlands Water District, we're working on water supply development. Those are either myself or other portions of the Hallmark group. We do have individual landowner clients, but not a whole lot. Tejon Ranch Corp, I guess, is one. But we typically have been working a lot with public agencies or agencies that are nonprofits.
So let's kind of pick up on Tejon Ranch a little bit. I know you said you do water resources management or planning for them, but they are party to the adjudication. Do you foresee a conflict of interest in there? Them coming to the board, asking for some water transfer, purchasing water rights, selling water rights, and if so, how do you plan in making sure that that conflict of interest and the board and the Watermaster is protected from that?
Yeah, Adam, good question. Maybe giving you some background on my experience. So as general manager of the Kern County Water Agency, we had 14 water districts that received water from the Kern County Water Agency, and at times I was accused of playing favorites for every one of them, and at times I was accused of attacking every one of them. And I figured I was doing a pretty good job because I felt that, it was my role to not play favorites and not to treat any of the 14 districts differently, but to follow the contract rules that were set up. And the way that we defended those critiques of, hey, you're playing favorites, was to frankly be very much in line with your core values of transparency, and openness. So when it comes to Home Ranch Corps, I haven't had any discussion with them on their strategies in the Antelope Valley or how they plan to manage their groundwater. That hasn't been an experience that I've spoken with their staff members. We focused on water resource management, development, and optimization there from a high level. And specifically, as I said, I've worked on the treatment end with other members of our team. So, do I plan? Typically, when we've moved into an area like this, we don't seek out new clients in that area if we're operating an organization like this. But it's natural that when we do move into an area, we get sought out. If we're doing a good job, people want to use us. And when those have come up, we've either refused them or we've discussed them with our current client, the board in general, to let you know that, hey, we've been approached for the specific to get your take. And that's been a very organic discussion we've had in a couple of situations. So with the Home Ranch Corps, I really respect the folks that work there. Again, I got to choose to work with them. They were one of the first people I worked with after leaving the agency and retiring. We'll continue to assist them as is appropriate without injuring our relationship with the Watermaster if we're your administrator.
I see. So, one question that I have, can you tell us the parallel between a GSA board management, or administrating a GSA board, and say the adjudicated Groundwater Master of the Antelope Valley Board? What's the parallel between those two?
Yeah, and a lot of parallels. So GSA board is a publicly composed board. So Kiama, for example, there are 11 board members. Some represent 4 of the counties that overlie that. Mm-hmm. Some represent the water district. Some are appointed, very much similar to the 5 board members here. 5 versus 11, I'd take 5 every time. It's a little bit easier to manage. Their structure, you have rules and regulations. They have a GSP that identifies how that basin's to operate, what programs are required to be implemented, and in some respects they're behind this basin because they haven't established allocation methodologies. But there are guidelines and protocols that the agency board has established that are very much like your rules and regulations that we're required to implement. There's an annual assessment in Kiama that we administer. We assist the board in establishing that rate. We advise them on the appropriate components. They review those with them, and we hold a hearing each year to establish that, just like you guys do. And we collect the assessments. If there's individual questions, we have staff that's tailored. It does a lot of one-on-one with the individual landowners that have questions. It's particularly important for the smaller landowners that may not be as involved in the day-to-day operations of the GSA. So we provide that background and that interaction with the GSA, very much like I think you're seeking in the Watermaster administration. If they're delinquent accounts, we work with legal counsel and the attorneys and the board to establish what's the appropriate mechanism for following up on those. So we work with those, again, very similar to what you guys do. We do an annual audit, do an annual budget, again, components that are required for any public agency, but familiar with generally accepted accounting principles, and comply with those and have gotten a clean audit for the GSA. So I'd say there's a lot of similarities in the administration of the GSA and the Watermaster, and why we felt we could do a great job for you guys.
Great. Two more quick questions. Yes.
Yeah, I'm running out of time, and I want to go through the.
Oh, okay. I'll wait.
And then I'll come back to you if.
That's fine. That's
okay.
Fine.
Great. Sorry about that. Kathy?
So we asked a lot of questions of you already. I want to know what you know or what you think about when you think of the AV region as a whole?
I was explaining to our staff when we were beginning considering throwing our name in the hat for this engagement, and I explained the Antelope Valley, East Kern area is really unique compared to the rest of the state. The culture is more similar to Kern County than it is to LA in general, but even that is unfair to the area because it has some unique components to it between agriculture, industrial, and residential use, as well as having a large urban presence like the city of Los Angeles with extremely important interest in it. So a really unique hub of interest within the state of California that in some ways touches on all the major concerns within the state in a way that may not happen in other areas. But it's not the tightly wound area that maybe you might see in downtown LA or downtown Sacramento. The people are more genuine. They're more comparable to our values of we prize straightforwardness and we're more casual. I haven't worn a tie in a long time, so that's part of it. So explaining not only is the environment here and the water resources different, the culture here is very different and unique in a way that I really enjoy. I've been over here enough to recognize some of those. So that's the way we view this area. Not like anything else. We're not going to rubber stamp and assume, oh, this is just like Kiama, it's another area. That's not fair to this area.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Beck, John Calandri liked the comment about no ties for a long time, and it's his turn to ask a question.
My turn? No, your turn.
I'm going to say it like
Okay, well, I've tried to ask questions from 4 different letters, but I think you've answered all the Grimway's questions, all the Wawa questions, all the Bolt House questions, and Helica got one on here. Her question from Tahone Ranch is strong water, about asking for your qualifications and strong water resource experience, including groundwater hydrology, infrastructure, state water project operations, water banking operations, water resource accounting, and relationships with the other state water contractors in the valley.
Yeah, I didn't have enough time to go into all the stuff that I've done, but I think some things that are particularly valuable in my role is I've done groundwater modeling, not just told someone. I've worked ModFlow and I've done all the inputs and I've actually written code to modify groundwater modeling programs. So to say I'm familiar with groundwater modeling is not an understatement. I did water modeling for the Kern Water Bank area. I've actually probably one of the few candidates I would bet that's done pump testing. Again, this isn't the general manager ordering someone to go do a pump test. I was the guy out in the field helping to oversee, and I've done well monitoring, so I know how to measure a well. I've helped in inspection. I'm not an engineer, but I've been present in the drilling of well and had to do well inspection when they were being drilled in 1991 during the severe drought, so very familiar with well construction. I also oversaw the expansion of the Cross Valley Canal, about a $500 million part of a $500 million capital enterprise of the Kern County Water Agency. So we expanded the lining of that, and that one I did some of the hydrologic modeling while I was the general manager because I had done it earlier in my career. So I redid it to optimize deliveries in the Cross Valley Canal. I've done hydrologic modeling for a number of organizations, including Improvement District 4, sophisticated surface water and groundwater modeling to maximize their resources while looking at their demand. So pretty unique technical background as well as administrative background for a GM. I met one other general manager that had done groundwater modeling. He was the manager of the state water contractors, but I really like the hands-on end. But as much as I enjoy that, I understand that Todd, Groundwater, and Phyllis Dana know a lot more than I do, and I know where to stop and what my role would be here. But I do enjoy that and feel that I have the expertise to ask the questions that need to be asked in any of those arenas.
I'm going to sneak a second one in like Adam did. When we're not Zooming and we're going to have meetings here, can you have somebody here personally for every meeting once a month?
Oh, yeah, I will be here at each meeting, and then Taylor will be here as well.
Thank you.
Derek.
Great. Well, you answered part of this with Adam, and I think even with Kathy, but maybe just a different slant. So, as Matt introduced this board, you saw, a range of diverse stakeholders here that we represent, and when we get fully back in the public, you'll see them as the public as well. Can you explain any of your current and past experience that represents these different type of stakeholders at the board level as well as at the public level?
Yeah, I'll start with my current experience. So Eastside Water Management Area is really an interesting group. It encompasses about 40,000 acres. If you're familiar with Bakersfield, it'll be east of Highway 65 and north of the Kern River to the Kern County line. Within that area, you have all of the major oil companies represented. All of them are on our board. So Chevron, CRC, Berry, and some smaller producers. So we have oil company presence. We also have some large and small citrus growers. We also have ranchers. We also have some small ranchettes that are outside of Bakersfield, so 5-acre ranchettes. We have about 35 members currently, and they represent about as diverse a group as you'll see in 30,000 acres. I really had trouble coming up with a group that wasn't represented in that. And they each have varying levels of understanding of Sigma, because this is a Sigma-based organization, but groundwater, everywhere from a small 5-family mutual that just drilled a well to meet their needs on the ranchettes and don't really have any clue of Sigma, to large oil companies that are right in the middle of it every day. And we have to assist all those stakeholders. They all pay an assessment. They've voluntarily joined that. So we have to manage the interests of all those diverse stakeholders and make sure that the interests of the EWMA come first, not any one stakeholder group, but we start with what's the best interest and what's appropriate for the EWMA to do. Very similar to what's going on in Kuyama, we have, again, a wide range of agricultural organizations that are part of that. We do have some oil companies. We have a very vocal and very interested local group of stakeholders that range in size. We have 4 counties. And I mentioned last time, juggling 4 counties has really been a new trick, trying to get those organizations coordinated and understanding the unique politics that come with each of those 4 counties. So again, our goal and our charge is not to represent or advantage or consider the individual needs of the stakeholders, but what's best for the GSA, what's best interest, what's appropriate, what's required, what's the agreements that are in place, what does the law require, and then begin to consider how does that impact the individual stakeholders, how do we communicate that, how do we answer the questions that they might have about what are you doing to me, because we get a lot of that, who are you and why are you doing this to me? And that's our job, whether you're a large landowner or a 5-acre parcel.
John Joyce, are you out there?
Yes, and
Yeah.
my question.
I'm going to give you my question.
Oh, thank you. My question to Jim is, who will take over the public communication job if you should get the contract?
Yeah, so we anticipate doing the public communication ourselves, so that'll be a part of our team effort. So during the transition and this is again something Jessica's got a lot of experience, the transition communications. She'll be involved in assisting and leading that effort. Then on a day-to-day basis, we have Taylor Blakesley, who's responsible for cataloging and directing and managing all incoming communication. So Taylor's the distribution center, and he may be the right person, but if he isn't, he'll be directing it to the person, which would be myself. If it's a financial matter, it would be Jacqueline Harris who would be resolving that. So those are the response type questions. When it comes to developing a communications policy and practice, that would be Taylor, myself, and Jessica developing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. I will go through the board one more quick time. If there's any other questions that you think are unanswered. So Adam, I knew you had.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, the last question I have, it's not two, just one. Do you have any relationship with any of the board members or your organization? I mean.
Yeah, good question. And apart from what I've already described with the Kiama Basin GSA, where Director Yaroseck is the chair, and I've described my previous relationships with Board House, I don't have any relationship with any of the other board members.
Thank you.
John? Gary? And I'm good. Thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. We really appreciate it, and thank you for coming up.
Thanks, and good luck with your decision. Appreciate the time to come here.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's take another 5-minute break for those out in probably right at 20 after with our next. And Matt, will you kind of explain what's going on?
Yes, thank you, Chair Parris. Good afternoon. We have our final interview for today, and it's with Regional Government Services, also known as RGS. I'll let you introduce your team in a minute, Sophia, but I'm going to start by introducing the board members. So on the left here, we have Director Yaroseck, who represents landowners in the judgment. Next to him, we have John Calandri, who also represents landowners. In the middle, we have Chair Director Rob Parris, who represents AVAC. And then we have Kathy MacLaren, who represents the public water suppliers. And on the phone today, we have Adam Ariki, who represents LA County Waterworks District 40. So we have a list of 10 questions that each of the directors are going to rotate asking. And then at the end, we have some follow-up questions by the directors. So with this, I'll turn it over to you to introduce your team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us here. It's our pleasure to be with you today and talk a little bit about what we do at Regional Government Services Authority and how we hope to partner with you. My name is Sophia Salavanoff. I'm our Deputy Executive Director. And I apologize, I'm a little muffled here. As I was saying to Matt, I'm a public administrator. I feel obliged to follow the rules. And I was with Carol, who's on our team last week, who is not able to be with us today because the rules say she needs to be at home. So she's on the phone, and I'm testing negative, but masking as Cal OSHA requires. April Kegwin is also with us. She and Carol are a team with the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. And I will let her talk a little bit more about herself.
Hi, my name is April Kegwin. I have been with the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority since about 2019. Before that, I did work with the water district that is also part of the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority Board. And I serve the GA. My role is clerk. However, I do different things depending on what day you call me. So definitely wear many hats. And I believe Carol's available, and she can introduce herself as well.
Hello, I'm Carol Thomas Kiefer. Apologize for not being there in person. I fully intended to do that today. As Sophia noted, though, I unfortunately tested positive for COVID several days ago, so I'm staying home until that virus is passed. Thank you for allowing me to participate. by Zoom meeting. No, I appreciate that. As April noted, we do work together managing the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. And I also have, about 35 years experience in water industry in general, with about 22 years in groundwater management, managing the main San Gabriel groundwater basin in the San Gabriel Valley. Also have worked with several investor-owned utilities over the years, most recently in Apple Valley. I think we bring a lot of really relevant experience to this project, not only with my Watermaster background, but also working with the Groundwater Authority, not only in Indian Wells, but I'm also working with Colusa Groundwater Authority up in northern Sacramento Valley. So we have a pretty broad variety of groundwater issues that we're managing, lots of interesting challenges, mixing both surface water and groundwater up there, a lot of agricultural interests, as opposed to, say, in Indian Wells Valley, where we're much drier, more similar to where you are here in Antelope Valley. But nevertheless, I think we bring just the right mix of water and administrative experience to this project. So let's move on.
Thank you, Carol, and we appreciate you staying home under the circumstances and hope you're...
Thought you would.
Real soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Derek, we'll start with the first question.
Well, you did a good job answering it. So I'll read it, and I'll read it, and then if there's anything that you didn't cover, maybe you don't need to, repeat things. So, if you could please describe any prior experience relating to management and operation of a public agency.
Well, I think if I might start, Regional Government Services is a joint powers agency. Our staff are 99.9% experienced public administrators. So we come from all kinds of California public agencies, special districts, municipalities, counties. We are very versed in the full range of public administration. Carol is one of our experts in specifically the administration of water issues and agencies, but we have several people who are involved in that throughout the state. And that is, I think, a real specialty of RGS that we bring, is that we've lived the life of a public agency. We know what's required. We know what all those mandates mean. We know what happens when we slip and don't get there, and we do everything we can to prevent that from happening to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy?
Okay. Being an excellent communicator is vital for the transition to the assigned duties for the Watermaster Board and various parties. So give me some examples of your communication style.
I'm going to defer this one to Carol to answer. She is our project lead for this opportunity, and if you are going to work with her, you'll need to hear her communication style firsthand.
Okay, take it away, Carol.
Okay, thank you. Well, and it happens that I have a bachelor's degree in communication arts from Cal Poly Pomona, but not necessarily speaking to my style. And I think my style for communication is to just be straightforward, open, friendly, interested in consensus building, and getting the information out there and getting as much feedback, processing that, and keeping the dialogue open.
Thank you.
And Adam, that brings us to you.
Hi. Let me make sure that I'm not muted. Thank you so much for coming back. I'm Adam Ariki. I represent LA County Waterworks District 40. Does your company have a conflict of interest that could affect you from carrying out the role of the Watermaster Administrator? Maybe Carol can speak to that.
We do not have a conflict of interest at this point at all. Now, I can tell you, well, we do work for Indian Wells Valley, and I know there's been some discussions with regard to the supplemental water issues that Indian Wells Valley is dealing with. Nevertheless, I don't see that even as a conflict, and I don't believe there are any conflicts whatsoever that would prevent us from carrying out our duties.
If I might add to that, like many law firms that work with public agencies and work with multiple public agencies, we have developed in RGS some methods of partitioning work and keeping things that might potentially overlap. And it doesn't happen real often, but occasionally we do run into that, and we try to separate that work between members of our team so that we really don't have the same people working on the same issues, where agencies may have some need to have someone kind of on their team as opposed to on multiple teams. So we are cognizant of the fact that while we hope to find a path that aligns everyone's interests, that's not always possible.
Thank you. John?
Morning. Now that you made the final three, what have you done since the last meeting to understand more thoroughly what is required of you, and do you believe your proposal and annual fee is still accurate? Second form of that would be, and are you still planning to do all the duties remotely?
I'm going to answer the second part first, and then I'm going to ask Carol to jump in and join me with her extensive knowledge of your organization and the business that you're in. I think our intention for you is not to do the work remotely entirely. The reason April's here and that we had hoped Carol would be here is both of them are in the region. They are close enough that they can be here in person when you need someone to come for in-person activities. Maybe that's for your board meetings. Carol, I know, is going to be up in Northern California every month for Calusa GA's board meetings. Maybe it's for some other kind of event where your stakeholders need to get together and talk about something, and we need to be here for that. So we will be here in person for those things. Whether or not it's truly necessary for someone to sit in an office 40 hours a week is a different question. I think we've all discovered over the past few years that's not necessarily the most effective way to get work done, and work can be done in other ways. One of our goals is to ensure that your work gets done by really well qualified people at the best possible price point. Some of those people do not live in this community, but I would really like to be able to apply their talents to your needs and give you a good price for that. So those folks will work remotely. But if you need them to be here, if California is travelable, we can be here. Carol, if you want to address that first part, maybe you even need to repeat the first part since I talked so much.
No, I think I can answer that, and yes, especially for board meetings, committee meetings. I don't see any reason why we can't be there in person for those if they're being held as in-person meetings. If there are other needs, we would certainly just need to know what those are so that we could work with you and determine when you need someone physically in the area and when it makes sense for us to work remotely. We could certainly work with you on that. The other part of the question was absolutely. I've been reviewing your judgment, your rules and regulations, been going through meeting minutes, and most recently pouring through your annual report, your most recent annual report just posted. Very nice, I might add. Thank you very much. That was a very nice report. And I absolutely feel that we are in a good position to provide those services to you. We can provide them, as I said, in the best way that meets your needs. We just need to talk about those priorities, what makes sense. And I believe we are well suited to meet those needs.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you've already answered 99% of my question, but I'll just ask it, see if you have anything else to add. Having a local presence and understanding of the needs of the Antelope Valley is important to the parties of the judgment. Please explain how you will maintain a local presence and stay engaged with the local needs of the community while implementing the judgment.
I guess the only thing I might add, as I said, we'll determine with you what makes sense in terms of being local, but we are fairly local anyway, April and I both, and we do very well understand the conditions here, the needs, and I think we're in a good position to serve those needs. And I guess it just goes back down to we just need to discuss with you what your priorities are, when you would like us present, what makes the most sense, and we can work that out.
Great. When you say you're local or fairly local, where are you located?
I live in Oak Hills near Hesperia, so not very far away.
Got it. Thank you.
If I can just add one additional thought to that.
Please, Sophie.
We staff 7 public agencies right now, and we staff them through a mix of people who appear in person to do things and people who work remotely. We know that that's important to the communities, not just to the governing body like yourselves, but to the people who receive services, who receive bills, who have things they want to talk about. To have someone they can meet with and really, get their issues addressed and get a sort of clear relationship going. And we think that's important. So it's always part of our goal to have someone regionally available on your team who isn't just dropping in an emergency, like I would drop in an emergency out of Northern California, but is actually regularly engaged in the ongoing work of your agency so that they are familiar with the needs and issues of your community.
Thank you. Derek?
Thank you. Can you please describe your general understanding of the Brown Act and any work experience involving the Brown Act?
Well, I'll start real broadly, and then maybe April can talk about her clerking experience. Obviously, the Brown Act governs what we're doing here with a public meeting, any public meeting of a standing subcommittee of a governing body. As I always tell people, I am not an attorney, and you really do need legal advice in order to interpret some of the more interesting parts of the Brown Act, but we are very familiar with all the basic noticing requirements, all of the basic meeting protocols that you need to have for a Brown Act. We do understand that sending out emails and serial communications can become somewhat problematic, and we manage and monitor that on behalf of the organizations that we work for all over the state. So Brown Act is one of those things that we intend to safeguard transparency of our public meetings in California everywhere that we participate in the management or advice to management of public agencies. And April's got her boots on the ground as a clerk with Brown Act, so.
Yeah, for the Brown Act, of course, I handle all the clerk tasks for the Groundwater Authority when it comes to meeting requirements, agenda requirements, board packet documents, resolutions, ordinances. I do it every day. And really, when in doubt, I always know to ask an attorney. I never do anything that I'm questioning in any way, shape, or form. Communications between board members, I always ensure to add notes into emails that, this is not to engage in conversation outside of public meetings. This is to serve as an FYI. Really, the Brown Act is making sure you're crossing your T's, dotting your I's, and keeping public transparency.
Thank you. Kathy?
Okay. Once again, one of those questions that you guys have gave us some information already, but anything you wanted to add is what relevant experience to this job do you have?
I'm going to defer that one over to Carol as well. I think she has the experience for this job.
I guess I'd say the most relevant experience is the 22 years I have with the Watermaster for San Gabriel Basin. And I think there's some similarities even with the judgments. They're by no way identical, but they have some similar components. And a lot of basically what it comes down to is basically assisting the Watermaster Board in administering the judgment, and as well as the rules and regulations, working closely with the engineer and the attorney to ensure all of that is done properly, and basically we're enforcing the judgment and administering its terms. So I think that's the most relevant experience, but I can also say that our work with the groundwater authorities in a couple of areas is also similar, very relevant. Obviously, we're working under SGMA in those areas, but very similar types of administration in terms of production reporting to the state, assessment, billings, things like that. So very relevant.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Adam, that brings us to you.
Okay. The question that I have is, do you have a backup person to, I'm assuming Carol is going to be the main person. Do you have a backup person that will take the responsibility of the Watermaster administrator in case you, for whatever reason, cannot do your function or do your job? And then if so, do they have the relevant experience that needed?
So we try to have several backup options for key assignments like this in RGS. I have a groundwater administrator from the Salinas Valley Basin GSA who launched that organization, who would be my go-to person if there was some emergency where Carol couldn't be available for you. Now, I realize the experience is not identical,
Sure.
but he's very adaptable, and he's really, really smart and really good. We have some other people with a range of water agency administrative experience that we could keep on our bench if that were necessary. We have had turnover in sort of the chief executive role for some of the agencies that we staff, and usually we do put someone in to cover that situation at least for several months. But if you need very specific skills, we will go and recruit another person. So we've been really successful with that. I think people like working with RGS and bringing their talents into our arena and having, a flexible, adaptable workplace to do that. So I'm not terribly concerned that we would be unable to meet this commitment to you one way or another.
Thank you.
Thank you. And John?
Now as we enter, now as we enter the final stage of selecting an administrator, explain your proposed staffing plan and the roles of the individuals of your team. And how would you approach the transition to ensure adequate training and development, and what would those individual people's credentials be?
So
you have answered a lot of this, and I understand that.
Yeah, our key project personnel, I think our intention is to bring you the team that has been so successful over the last year plus at Indian Wells Valley. So that's Carol and April and Gina Schuchard, our finance director. We have a number of other people working on that team doing accounting and financial things and some implementation of a new accounting software for them. That team is sort of a transitional team helping them get things in place that they need. The core team is Carol, April, and Gina. So I'll let Carol and April talk with you a little bit about how that team works together and what they do to help each other stay on top of things and stay on top of issues for you.
Sure. So I think the way we set up our roles is very similar to a traditional organization where I perform most of the management duties, but April is there to assist not only with the board clerk, but she handles a lot of the administrative work. She helps me a lot with administrative activities, agendas, staff reports, actually a pretty wide variety. As April said, she does wear a lot of hats. And then we have Gina, who handles the financials. And although we normally work very well remotely, I would expect that for this transition, at the very least, April and I might want to come up and sit with your staff on one or two occasions for a day or two, several hours at a minimum, and just talk about the work and the flow and the schedules, and just work on the transition. I can see it. I believe we could have the transition done within 90 days, frankly. But I would see us just starting off that first month with maybe just meeting with staff, getting some work transferred over, and then working on how we're specifically going to get that work moved over and get document access and information moved.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. And I have the last formal question. And when we started our Watermaster board,
Fewer than 100 employees, in most cases fewer than 50. So they are not wealthy public agencies. Cost control is a huge issue with them at all times. It's really important that we have a conversation with you very early in the process to understand your needs and priorities and get the important stuff at the very top of the list and get that done for you before we get to the end of the budget. RTS is really a no-frills organization. We don't have offices. We keep our costs down by having people stay at home. We don't buy equipment. We give people allowances, and they purchase whatever they like with that. So we really are managing overhead with some innovation for ourselves, and we're happy to think about innovative ways to manage that for you too. It is important, of course, that we keep the communication going all along. Things happen outside of everyone's control that take attention and time and resources, and we want to be sure that we discuss those as early as we are aware of them and come to some understanding of their impacts and their importance and how much you want to invest in them, whether you want us to invest in them or you want your legal counsel to invest in them or your engineering firm or some combination thereof, and how you want to deploy those resources. So constant communication about what we're doing and what it's costing, I think, is going to be an essential ingredient for cost control in this organization, as in all of the others that we work with. Carol?
Yeah, and so just to add to that a little, I mean, there's a lot of things we can do. Obviously, we're going to manage all of the consultant contracts, including our own, to ensure that they stay within budget. And as Sophia noted, we're going to understand what your top priorities are to make sure that we are consistently addressing them and working to see where we can loosen up, where we can relax, and where we need to tighten our belts. But I think, I come from a background where increasing water production assessments is not a popular thing. I don't know any water producer that likes to see assessments increase, no matter what type of producer they are. It comes out of their pocket, their own budget. And so I like to run a lean and mean organization. We want to make sure that you get the services you need, but we are no frills. As Sophia said, this is a no frills organization, and that's how we
remember that number. I think that we submitted one number, and then we had a conversation with this board in a previous interview where you said this is the number, and we said we can work with that. I'm just trying to remember what the we can work with it number was.
Yeah, this is Matt. In your proposal, does 230,000 ring a bell?
Yes, that does.
Okay.
But I think our conversation was that was probably not a realistic number for this group.
Right. I think we, because I believe you're in your budget, at least for 2022, you had a number of, I think, 150,000 plus some additional staff time and some other categories. And we recognize that our proposal maybe is outside of that. But I think, as we were just talking about, what we really would just need to do is talk about those priorities and make sure that we have enough time allocated to address what's important and work from there. And then we'll make sure that we manage the budget.
great, thank you very much. And now we're going to go around the table and out to
Adam on questions, but it's Derek's turn for the first question for directors.
Thank you. Thank you. As Matt introduced the board, you had the opportunity to look at, a diverse stakeholder representation. Can you explain some current and past experiences representing different stakeholders and how you interacted with them?
Well, yeah.
Right.
And in my previous life with the Watermaster, we had a variety of stakeholders. Now, not necessarily on the board. The board would generally be made up of municipal water district representatives and public utility or private utility water producers, for the most part, cities, investor and utilities. However, we had a broad variety of water producers, and they were involved in all of our activities because our committees were always open to all interested parties, all interested producers especially. So we were always working with a broad variety of water producers, and even now in Indian Wells Valley, we have a pretty broad array of producers. April can speak to that a little, and then in Colusa, we're working actually with a lot of agricultural interests, but also water suppliers as well, and some large ag, some small ag, but basically we're just open to everybody's input. We want to hear feedback from everyone. If we have specific needs for outreach, we're open to that. But I think our history is that we're used to dealing with a pretty broad spectrum of water producer interests. April, do you want to speak a little to some of the different types of water producers?
Right. So in the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority, our board, like Carol said, is made up of Water District, City, Inyo County, San Bernardino County, and Kern County. We understood that wasn't representing, that you take a big group of people and you give them one representative. So that is why the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority, we made two subcommittees called the Policy Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee. And those groups are made up of large ag, small ag, residential, industrial. We have some larger commercial buildings in Ridgecrest. And that way we're making sure that stakeholder engagement is at an all-time high. We want to make sure that the public feels heard and that people don't feel like one person is speaking for them. And I think that's really important. And like Carol said, I am from Ridgecrest, so I get the idea of having the public involved and having that face of a person, and it's not just over the phone or via WebEx. So we're always making sure that I am there, Carol's present, and that we allow the public every opportunity to come in and voice their opinions as well.
Thank you. John?
Indian Wells Valley, our basin is just up to 14 past Cal City. Our basin starts there, and then we go into Inyo County in the smallest bit, but we cover Inyo, Kern, Ridgecrest, Trona, and like I said, a very small part of Inyo County. I believe it's just up to Pearsonville.
My question is, number 9, with the same team as the Indian Wells team, in a real short note, what was the problem in this part of it? What was the big problem?
Carol, I don't know if you want to take that.
I'm not sure I couldn't completely hear him. Are you asking what the water issue is in Indian Wells?
What was the reason you guys were called in to take care of the Indian Wells problem, and what was that problem? As short as you can make it.
Oh, well, the Indian Wells Valley Basin is a critically overdrafted basin. So there was a groundwater sustainability agency formed there several years ago. It's a joint powers agency, and it was run by by the staff of several of the members rotating year to year until, I guess, 2020, they decided that they wanted to contract out the services. And so it was in 2021 that RGS won the contract to provide comprehensive administrative services. Now, that said, the issue is they're a critically overdrafted basin and basically looking for ways to supplement their very limited water supply.
And the second part of the question, how were the farmers dealt with in that agreement? cut back a certain percent, how were they dealt with?
I'm going to say that the process prior to 2021 was before I began working with them. So I'm probably not the best one to ask that.
So when we, the Groundwater Authority, they had the GSP. We had to have a GSP submitted by January 2020. Part of our GSP included what we call the transient pool. And agricultural users in the basin had the option to take part in that transient pool. And they basically were given an amount of water that would sunset their agricultural operations that they could use up until 2040. They can use that water, they can sell that water, it is theirs entirely. And then if they chose to forego the transient pool, they could continue to pump in the basin as long as they remained mandated by the fees, which is the extraction fee and the replenishment fee. But we really try to give ag those options of what's financially feasible for them. We understand, I'm from North Dakota, so I get the agriculture. It's in my family for generations as well. And we understand that for some people, it's not just a business, it's been a family operation. And to see that operation sunset is really hard. But we really want to make sure that we're doing it in the best way possible for them and that they feel that they have options as well.
Thank you.
But to be clear, we came in to provide the contract services. Our RGS didn't develop the groundwater sustainability plan.
Perfect. Thank you.
Kathy?
Okay, so thank you. We asked you guys a lot of questions, and I want you to tell me how and what do you know about the Antelope Valley region?
Carol and April?
We can start off here. I'm a Southern California native, and so I know a little bit about the Antelope Valley. I basically grew up in Los Angeles County, so I generally know your area. I know you've had a lot of agriculture there, and then I also know that over the past maybe 20 or 30 years, there's been a lot of growth in your area. And there's been a bit of a clash between environmental issues and water sustainability. I know that the need for water supplies resulted in your groundwater adjudication, basically because of the overdraft that began to happen. But I do know that there's a big need to balance the needs of residential and urban growth versus continuing agriculture, which is very important in the area as well. You are a major importer for the state water project, so imported water plays a key part in the water supply for the area. That's probably a pretty good mouthful right there.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And Adam?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming back. We appreciate it very much. I'm not clear on, I raised the issue of a conflict of interest. And Carol, you mentioned the fact that Indian Wells had a water supply issue, and I didn't see the connection between the fact that they have a water supply issue and a conflict of interest. Did I read that correctly?
It's not, I don't believe it's a conflict of interest. It may be that Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority has some dealings with, perhaps not with the Watermaster, but with AVEC, with Antelope Valley East Kern, in terms of a imported water supply connection. I don't think there will ever be any conflict with the Watermaster.
Understood. Are they within AVEC service area?
I think there's a portion that's within AVEC, and I think there's some discussions that are starting to take place.
I did not know that. Thank you for clarifying that. And I know you have extensive experience in groundwater supply, or I should say, Watermaster Board management. Can you tell us the parallel between your previous job at the Mesa and Gabriel Basin and the current job of the Antelope Valley Watermaster job? What did you do there that is going to be similar in here?
I think there would be a lot of similarities. I reported directly to the Watermaster Board there for St. Gabriel. My job was to oversee the staff and ensure the administration of the judgment pursuant to the Watermaster Board's direction. I worked directly with the consulting engineer and with the attorney for the board. And so I view this as a very, very similar role.
Okay. All right. And then do you know any of the board members at the Antelope Valley Watermaster Board?
Well, I do not, although Adam, I believe you, when we had our last interview, you reminded me that we worked together. We had some dealings many years ago.
That's true. I was very, very young. If you see me now, you wouldn't be able to tell.
I was considerably younger myself.
I was 22 years old.
But no, I don't believe I know any of the board members.
Thank you. And one last question, and this may be for Sophie, is can you talk, last time I asked a question about your business model and how I was impressed on your organization and how you leverage your resources and create efficiencies. Can you talk a little bit about that business model and how it could benefit us here in creating efficiencies and cutting costs?
I think that our general business model in regional government services is to take all of the public sector management expertise we can from whichever discipline a person's career's been in and borrow from each other to give to our clients. So we really are very open source. We have many drafts, templates, models, manuals, systems that come to us from public agencies all over California. We adapt them for our clients. We don't start anything new for you unless it really is a new thing in the world that you need created just for you. And we think that that saves our clients a lot of money. We certainly leverage each other's knowledge. We do not have to go very far to find somebody who knows the answer to most of our questions, and we don't have to pay very much for that either because they're on our team and we have control of that. We've worked really hard in the last 10 years to build a multi-level, multidisciplinary team so that we can bring you just the increment of skills you need at the price point that's the best possible price point. Problem with staffing an agency, and I've worked for many years in human resources in the public sector, is you hire a specific set of expertise, and that is what you need 32 hours a week, but those other 8 hours, you really need something else. So that person's either not the best expert in doing it for you, or they're hiring the best expert and you're paying additional funds for that. So one of the things that I think is terrific about RGS, and I love that we're able to do this, is to be able to bring you just that increment of skill that you need when you need it and not any other time.
Okay, and does that apply to software as well?
We're not software developers. We do have software tools that we use, some of which we implement on behalf of our clients. So we have the accounting system I mentioned that we're implementing in Indian Wells Valley is a small software for fund accounting. It is not one of those big multi-million-dollar ERPs that many public agencies have, but we find that it works really well for public agency accounting. And we do share that amongst a number of our agency clients. And of course, the more people that participate, the better the price point for each of them, because our software vendor has given us a singular price point and we get to split it up between our clients. So we're pretty excited about that. We also do that in our recruitment team with NeoGov. We have a relationship with them where they've given us a price point and all of our clients can participate in that price point. So we work pretty hard to get software available that works for public agencies, again, sharing that cost.
Thank you.
And John Joyce, you out there, I'm going to give you my question.
Thank you. You're very generous. Communicating the efforts of the Watermaster to protect the basin is ongoing and consistent, and we feel obligated to carry that information to the people that ultimately pay the bills. So my question is, who in the media, from your standpoint, is going to deal with us in the media week to week or month to month?
I think I can provide those services. I do have some background in that area, and I'm used to being a contact in terms of being a media spokesperson. I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy to just provide information to the board chair or officers if they would like to do that. But I'm certainly available and happy to provide those services as needed.
Thank you very much. And we still have some time, so there.
Great, thank you. It's going back through my notes from our first interview, and I remember, kind of scratching my head a bit on your JPA structure. And so I'm trying to go back as I think about continuity. We've had one team on board since we started, and it's been very helpful. Any transition is difficult, but multiple transitions become troublesome. So if I think about continuity and I think about your staff and, all of them and how that your organization is structured, help me is, are these employees, are these contractors, is JPA between each, and maybe just 101 that for me.
Sure. Our JPA was formed between a couple of public agencies in the Bay Area, and it was specifically done with an eye to having a resource of expert staff available to public agencies. So our staff are our employees. They are not linked to our member agencies. Our member agencies truly sponsor and participate in our JPA because they believe in what we do. So we've had some of our board members with us for a dozen or more years. They are just really committed to this model. They understand that public agencies in California cannot fully staff everything that they need at all times, and that many public agencies are understaffed and inadequately resourced all the time. So we represent one way people can be helped in that regard. Our employees mostly work in a variety of organizations on an hourly basis in what I would call a consulting capacity. We do staff several public agencies and have done so in some cases for 14 or 15 years. We provide a really large cadre of single assignment fixed staffing to the CalSAWS Automated Consortium, which is a statewide automation project that's been going on for a really long time. That's about 60 people that we provide to them. Those people turn over, but we hire new ones, and we look for specific skill sets, and they have a singular assignment. We have half a dozen other public agencies that we've staffed, some of them for 10 or more years. In that time, we have had some staff turnover. I agree with you, constant turnover and churn is problematic. We don't want to have that for organizations with whom we have that relationship and for whom that is our service. And we do make a distinction between what we call professional employer services like this and consulting, which is come in for a reasonably finite period of time and do a specific project. It's very hard not to have abrupt transitions. Our people understand how impactful that is. They've lived through that in many other parts of their career. Like I have a gentleman who's leaving one of our agencies. He's their finance director, and he told me 2 months ago that in September he's going to be done. So that's a really long runway, and our people understand we need that kind of runway to find the right person. Occasionally we have an emergency and we can't do that, but that is why we have worked very hard to have a bench where there isn't a job that we can't cover for at least 6 months while we find you the right person for the next 5 or 10 years of your agency's operation. And that's why I'm here. Carol's your project leader. She knows water. She would be running the operations of this organization and helping carry out the direction of this board. My job is to make sure she's got the backup bench that she needs available to her, as I make sure of that for all of the agencies that we provide this service to. It's really important to us that we don't let you down.
Great, thanks. And maybe just a follow-up question. Firm size.
We're about 170 employees right now. Our team that we deploy to multiple agencies rather than a singular agency is probably 100 employees at any given point in time.
And if you don't mind, I'll just add a little to that. That, as Sophia said, this would be my team. I'm particularly interested and excited about this opportunity because it does relate so closely to much of my background, and I am located in the region, so it's an easy commute for me if I need to be in Palmdale or Lancaster area. And April is not too far in Ridgecrest. She's also available to be there in person, and she has a great background, and she and I have been working really well together for the past year and a half. And I think our intent is just to provide you a really good team for as long as you'd like us to work for you.
All right, the next one is a same question asked the previous people from Tahone. We feel that the question is strong water resource experience, including groundwater hydrology, infrastructure, state water project operations, water banking operations, water resource accounting, and relationships with other state water contractors in the valley. And address some of those issues and where you stand on it.
I'm generally familiar with all those. I didn't write all of those down as you were speaking them, and I believe I've seen them, but I'm not sure what document to go to right away to have it in front of me. But working with the San Gabriel Basin, we worked closely with the engineer. There was a lot of work to do because of groundwater contamination there, in addition to the overdraft situation. So not only were we managing water supply, but we were also managing water quality and working with a lot of regulatory agencies on Superfund projects, cleanup projects. So when you get involved in a lot of that, you're looking at a lot of different aspects of hydrologic conditions. We regulated pumping for the control of water quality. So a lot of really good general experience, and a little bit more technical, obviously not to the degree of a hydrogeologist or an engineer, but a lot of really good, more than general experience with regard to the hydrogeologic conditions and the issues that we're dealing with. The accounting, we've definitely have a lot of experience with, especially with our GSAs that we deal with, because we do a lot of that basically in the same manner. We're requesting that production be reported, and we're developing assessment billings, so we're very familiar with that. Let's see.
Water banking.
Water banking, yeah. We dealt with various storage accounts in the main San Gabriel Basin. And in fact, there are 3 different municipal water districts who are imported water suppliers there in San Gabriel. They each had storage accounts to bring in imported water for future uses, basically for pre-deliveries, for replacement water obligations. Also, we also began to develop different agreements because export for many years wasn't permitted, but we began to develop, recognizing the growing need, began to develop agreements for export so that others could bring water in and store it and bring it out to other areas as needed. So some really good experience in that area as well.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Kathy's good. Adam, any other questions? Very good. Any other questions from the public? Okay. Outstanding. We finished a little bit early with you. We really appreciate the time and for coming here, and Carol, for you being available under the circumstances. And
Thank you for your flexibility.
absolutely.
Thank you so much
Yep,
for this
we're
opportunity.
good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now we're going to take a 10-minute break and we will go into closed session. And I think closed session, can we do it in the back room?
Yeah.
Can we get that set up back there? Okay, great.
We just need to get Adam on one.
So do you want to call me, or how do you want to do that, Matt?
Yeah, give us a few minutes, Adam, and we'll reach out to you.
Yes, stay on the line and we'll move you over.
And
All right, I'll stay on the line.
You move me over too?
Craig,
Yeah.
Craig, you're here. Yeah, we'll
Yep,
bring you in
yep.
closed session and staff in closed session.
Yeah, I think Cameron's on too, so
Yes, I'm here as well.
good. Thank you.
Stand by.
Groundwater participants?